Hey everybody, welcome to the Nightworms YouTube channel. I am your host, Mother Horror, Sadie Hartman, and with me today is LP Hernandez.
Hello, everybody.
And he is the author of this book that everybody got in their package in June called Stargazers. We have had probably some of the most feedback that we've ever gotten with this book. I think its cute little size and that it's a novella made it so that everybody put it first and read it really fast. So if you want to just talk to us really quick and just give us a little background as to like how you came up with this story.
Sure. So I'm not sure. I think I wrote about it in the book itself, maybe towards at the end, under my acknowledgments that I had this idea kicking around, or maybe a no sleep story that was going to be kind of a joke. Like the whole thing would be a big setup just for a joke at the end. And I had this image in my head of people staring open mouthed. So kind of the same setup, but it was during the day. And at that time it was going to be called sun gazing or something like that.
Sure.
And so I kind of just played around with the idea in my head and kept the imagery, but never wrote the story. And then when this novella call came out, I was like, it was just that switch from day to night that I think started the wheels turning and created the character, and the backstory came together pretty quickly. And it really was just based off of that image of, someone staring up at the sky, and then myself, asking the question, why would that be? And then, throughout I think I had some fun because the novella is structured where in between every chapter where we're following this family, there's a forum post. And I didn't really get my start on No Sleep as far as like, the Reddit. I posted a couple of stories there, but I pretty much just went straight to the podcast. But I'm a big Reddit user, and I enjoy the No Sleep and other subreddits. So kind of playing with that and filling in some of the blanks, like that the family that the story follows wouldn't have access to all this information. So you get to see experiences for people that are undergoing this stargazer phenomenon, throughout the country.
Yeah, so it's funny because I just got started recently on Reddit, so I kind of could relate to the authenticity of those posts. Like
Mhm.
it cracks me up how realistic it is, like how somebody will post something like really serious or like well thought out, and then you just have
Yes.
like hecklers that come in and just kind of, I don't know, add their 2 cents or whatever. But then there's also some really legit conversations happening over in Reddit.
Mhm.
Like I'm part of the horror lit community. And there's just like a huge community of people there who have like tons of recommendations and are really smart about horror and anybody can pop like a recommendation in there and stuff. And I just thought that this was so like, just having just joined it, um,
Mhm.
that really resonated with me.
You got to
But
weed through all the chaff to get to the good stuff sometimes.
yeah, tell us about No Sleep. So is that started as a Reddit thing or?
Yes, before it was the podcast, I think during the first maybe three or so seasons, I'm not sure at what point they went to more submission based, but I believe during the beginning of No Sleep, the podcast, they were sourcing stories from No Sleep, the Reddit community, where people are posting stories that are, they're almost always first person. It's supposed to be so. In the comments, people interact like, it's kind of like everybody's buying into this, I guess, fantasy that this horrific story actually happened. For the most part, there are plenty of trolls there too. So No Sleep, the podcast, began sourcing stories from No Sleep, the Reddit community, and then as No Sleep, the podcast progressed, they started to go to more submission based.
Yeah, so it kind of reminds me of creepypasta a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of that stuff is, I'd say some of that creepy pasta, like in the mid 2010, probably a lot of that got its start as a no sleep story.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's making connections for me, definitely. And then we did this book, this novella through the My Dark Library series. did you write that specifically for that call, or did you already have that like rolling around in your head?
So I had several thousand words of it written when you and I interacted, because there were a few novella calls coming out, and I was like, well, if I don't land it with yours, maybe I'll land it with someone else's. I think there were 2 to 3 that were going to end around May, and I was like,
Yeah.
it's a reasonable time to churn out 30,000 words or so. So I had usually when I write, I'm pretty much flying by. So pantser, I guess that's the term people
Oh,
use.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So this one I actually sat down and wrote like half a page for each chapter, which I found much easier when it came to actually sitting down to write the story. I could just refer to that chapter, even if I deviated from it slightly. So it came together a lot quicker once you and I interacted. And I thought, yeah, this probably would be a better fit for my dark library than maybe some of the other novella calls that were out. Those were more on the extreme side of things. So I think I'm fortunate it came together just perfectly. Like I had made enough progress. I was comfortable at the writing pace I was at when you reached out to me, and yeah, it was probably one of the easiest writing experiences I've had. Not that the material was easy to write, but that it came together so smoothly for me.
Yeah, that's cool because I mean, mentioned it in the forward too, but you wrote a story for Human Monsters, or you submitted a story for Human Monsters. And yeah, so I wrote all of that in the forward. So people are going to have to read the forward to get that.
Mhm.
But basically, LP came upon my radar with Human Monsters, and then I kind of like solicited this novel. I was like, "What else do you have?" And I have found that there's so much talent. There's just a huge talent pool in the horror industry, and so when we were getting all these submissions, I was a little bit overwhelmed
Mhm.
by just all these new names I was seeing with these amazing stories. And yeah, to be perfectly honest, I was dipping into a ton of people's DMs and being like, "What else you got? What else you got?" I was like a kid in a candy store. So that was really fun.
Well,
I'm
I
really
took that and
glad.
ran with it.
What'd you say?
I said I took that and ran with it. When you asked me what else,
Yeah.
I was like, "This is all I'm doing now for the next month is churning out this story." I put everything else on the back burner.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we also should probably say that you've been a Nightworm subscriber
Yes.
for how long now?
Oh man. I, mm, well, I've been here for over a year, so maybe a year and a half now. I think at that time it was, you know, I was one of those people that was on the outside looking in, just waiting for the chance to get to be able to get in. So
Yeah.
probably about a year and a half now. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're a subscriber, and then this book came around, and I was like, it would be perfect to kick off the launch of my dark library by including it in the Nightworms package. And then you did an unboxing, kind of unpackaging video
Mhm.
that people can access that's on social media. Did you post it anywhere else besides Twitter or?
I may have actually. I don't. I'm pretty much just exclusively Twitter now. It feels like Facebook's kind of
Yeah.
dying on the vine a little bit, but I had done those before. Those were like my distracted unboxing, where I would just like walk in to the house with whatever chaos is going on and try to do an unboxing video. So kind of funny. But that one, of course, I knew was going to have my book in it, so it was a little special.
Yeah, so that's and it's kind of like this weird full circle for me too because I think it's great just to incorporate like the fan base with what we're including in
Mhm.
the package. Like it's an exciting evolution for Nightworms, I think too, because the fans really inform us, as we do like our Nightworms social media
Mhm.
stuff and engage with customers and do Instagram and Twitter and we're hearing all this feedback. Like it's cool to be able to incorporate what we're learning from the fan base into the package, but then also to incorporate the fans into the package, is just, I don't know, it is like kind of a special thing that probably doesn't happen all the time.
I feel like this whole year has been, wouldn't it be cool if, and then whatever actually happened. Like, wouldn't it be cool if I got into Human Monsters? Wouldn't it be cool if I landed this novella call and then, oh, I'm sure she has Nightworms plotted out like a year in advance, but wouldn't it be cool if I got into the Nightworms, and it just
Yeah.
keeps on happening? So,
Yeah, it is. It's really exciting. And I'm excited to see just a lot more new voices kind of just launch out and start doing their thing, because I'm kind of getting into this like philosophy with our horror genre that we can reach across the table and grab for other audiences, I think.
Hmm.
Because I don't think that Stargazers is just necessarily straight up horror. I think you've packed so much like emotional tension in there with the father and the daughter,
Hmm.
that that could just really appeal to a wide variety of people. It's not so horror that it's I don't know how you want to say it. Like it's not being exclusive or limited
Sure.
to other
It's like
genres.
you said, horror with heart. So
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
put the heart first, heart with a touch of horror.
Right. Yeah. I mean, is that what you like to write? Do you find that you're gravitating towards like relational experiences more?
Yeah, it's hard not to. Even if I'm writing an extreme story, I always end up more focused on the emotions and the relationships. And maybe that's, being a father has changed that for me, but it's, and I know you've talked about it as well, your personal tastes in horror. I think you just get so much more buy-in, from your audience if it's like that family dynamic with Henry
Yeah.
and Penny that everybody can relate to that, especially, I mean, you don't have to be a parent, just a loved one, but you can totally put yourself in their shoes. And I feel like that's the where the real terror is. Growing up writing, it was aliens, it was whatever, monsters, bumps in the night, vampires, stuff like that. But um, as I've matured, I think as a writer and as a person, that it all kind of goes back to like what made Bird Box so successful. Even though
Mhm.
it was, this thing happening in outside the world, it was the dynamic, the tension within, this house that was the real horror story.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think also like cutting my teeth on Stephen King novels kind of set me up for what was going to appeal to me in
Mhm.
horror, because I've always fallen in love with Stephen King's characters. And then that's part of the horror, is just hoping that nothing bad happens to them, even
Yeah.
though you know something will.
Yes.
So I think he started that trend for me, and then I've been looking for it everywhere, since. I mean, not to say that other things don't appeal to me, but like that's kind of what I gravitate toward. But what else are you writing? So it sounds like when you say, in your writing journey, you're not finished. It sounds like you've got lots of things going on.
Well, one big focus, I've kind of put all other calls on hold. So a coming of age style story. You talked about Stephen King. He was one of my idols growing up as well. And then I think the, the stories that stuck with me, maybe is because I was reading about kids my own age, of course, were stories like It and then Boy's Life with Robert McCammon.
Oh
That's
yeah.
one book that I've read multiple times, and I just kind of see myself in that book. So I'm always drawn to kind of recreating that experience. So I am over halfway done with what I will be my first, I guess, novel length, successful novel length. There are other attempts in my computer. This will be my hopefully first successful novel length coming of age story called Two Dead Boys.
Mm,
And it's weird how sometimes you'll have like a title in your head, or like with Stargazers, I have an image in my head. I just don't know what to do with it. I may
yeah.
sit with it for months or years, and then suddenly something comes along and it's a perfect fit. And so
Yeah.
that Two Dead Boys is a poem. It's kind of like a farcical poem where every line kind of contradicts itself in the next line. But I had the idea in my head, just like this title, and then finally found a story that works with it. So it'll be, my contribution to the canon, of I know you talked about girls on bikes, so I have a couple of those, but boys on bikes type stories.
Yeah.
And in this story, I kind of stay away from the science of it, but people are able to clone their deceased children. So our main character is a friend of a cloned child, and it's kind of their journey together because um, there's a lot of kind of touches on some societal things that we're seeing now, like whatever LGBTQIA, anti-trans, all that stuff. Well, that's now being thrust upon these clone children and kind of imbuing them with all of these horrible qualities when they're just trying to live their lives. So
Hmm.
it's a coming of age story with a horror, some little elements of horror kind of sprinkled throughout, but leaning more heavily into the heart, like you and I just talked about.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I'm super intrigued by that. Especially like the AI stuff that's been coming around for me a lot. I recently read a story. I won't like disclose the details, but I recently read a story that has some AI as like the main theme of the story. And it's just something I think that all of us think about on some level. And we've watched a lot of movies and we read a lot of books that deal with that subject. And it's kind of one of those things that sits on the fringes of our imagination as something like this could potentially be really bad, you know?
Yes.
So, yeah, that sounds almost like a scientific pet cemetery type of thing,
Yeah,
even.
actually, when I think I talked to Seth Humble about it, he had the Pet Cemetery kind of, that was his gut like connection to it as well. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, because, with the connection with the children and stuff and, like, maybe not being exactly what you had hoped for
that's
the
exactly what, a big bulk of the journey is, people in their grief kind of electing to go this route and then finding out this is a whole different person.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
because that's it does present that question whenever I've heard of, like, people cloning their pets.
mhm,
I've always just kind of thought, like, "But it's not your pet. It's not that
yes,
original pet."
yes.
Yeah, cool. That's
So
exciting.
strong elements of grief. If people had a hard time with it in Stargazers, it's going to be, you have to get the
Mhm.
tissues out for this one.
Yeah, it's actually funny. I don't really know what it is, what it says about horror fans or readers in general that appreciate grief, horror, and trauma, but there is a pretty wide collective of people who
Mhm.
enjoy getting their hearts crushed.
Yeah,
So I'm one of
I'm
those.
happy to contribute to that.
Awesome. Thank you. I should let our fans know, Nightworms, that if you enjoyed Stargazers, LP has a collection out called The Rat King, which
Mhm,
I recently read, and I thought all of the stories were so unique and completely original to you, and then set apart as a variety of stories in the collection where like your voice is threaded throughout, but all of the stories are so incredibly different. It was such a good collection. I
thank you.
really hope people check that out. If they enjoyed Stargazers, which it sounds like so many people are, yeah, the Rat King is right there. And then you have another collection that just came out or is a reprint of a older collection you had.
Yes, so Velox Books approached me last year about relaunching my first collection, which I think was 2015 or 16, and I knew that had some warts in it. It was one of those things that I wasn't even looking at reviews anymore because I knew I progressed so much as a writer that,
Mhm.
this was my first baby and it was ugly.
Yeah.
But I,
Ugly baby.
yeah, there's some, like with every, maybe it has a, I don't know, there's some endearing qualities about it. Some of my favorite stories I've ever written because I didn't think this would go anywhere are in that collection. But um, I spent about a month kind of polishing, shining some, like one story in particular, completely overhauling just because, I've learned so much since I wrote that. And then I added another story in there, and then we relaunched that earlier this month. So I wouldn't say the same voice that you probably heard in Rat King and Stargazers is there, but um, in certain stories, I can see that that's
Yeah.
that was beginning. That voice was beginning. So, but every one of them has now, it makes total sense. Maybe they didn't the first time, and I'm really proud of where it is right now.
Well, that's cool.
And
I
so that was
mean,
all dreadful. Sorry.
well, it's cool that writing is an evolution and it's a process that, kind of a journey that an author goes on. And I think that it even highlights what we say even more when reviewers and readers are like, oh, I really enjoyed this book. I'm going to keep an eye on this author.
Hmm.
Like, that's really true. Like, you are just going to keep an eye on this author and maybe go back and read what's in their back catalog, but
Hmm.
definitely for sure see what they're up to next because it is going to be like this long journey with
Hmm.
a person who's learning how to use their voice, their storytelling voice. I mean, the Chuck Wendig that I started reading in the beginning with the Miriam Black series is definitely a different author than reading Wanderers and the Book of Accidents and stuff. Like he's really tapping into new voices and new, you know, genres, I think. Stuff like that.
Yeah, we're all trying to find our home, and there were several good attempts at it in that book that I'm glad I was able to kind of, you know, with my perspective now, add some extra context and maybe take out some stuff that didn't need to be there. But yeah, same thing. Robert McCammon started as a pure horror author, and now he's doing like historical fiction. So it's been wonderful to watch.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, I really want to thank you for your time hanging out with me and celebrating your launch day. Today is the day that Stargazers by LP Hernandez is
Mine are
out.
behind me. I've got a big stack back there.
Yeah, I was really noticing your cool space there.
Thank you. It's all due to my wife.
That's so awesome. We do have to just mention that LP's wife is just an amazing supporter of his work. And I've had the lovely opportunity of talking to her several times. So it's a family effort over there in the Hernandez house, which, I mean, writers really like, it is like a lonely art, you know, sitting there writing your stories, but it's supported by the people around you, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome to get that feedback, write a chapter and then go read it to her right away.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. Yeah, so go ahead and pick this up from Cemetery Gates. This had an exclusive release through Nightworms, but now it's available to everyone. So check it out. There's going to be 5 more books coming out in the My Dark Library series that we're really excited about. Chandler Morrison's is coming out in August. So yeah, thanks again for being with me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we'll see you soon. But stay, because we're going to talk after this. Okay.